beneath the crystalline towers of Vexithara Prime, where gravity flows upward in spirals of amethyst light, and the wealthy float through translucent corridors on beds of pure energy. 17-year-old Zapira had never felt the ground beneath her feet. Born with neural pathways that refused to connect her mind to her lower limbs, she remained bound to her hover chair, while her father's fortune bought everything except the one thing she craved most: to walk among the stars like others of her kind. The Academy's marble halls echoed with whispered mockeries, each cruel word cutting deeper than her condition ever could. But in the depths of those gleaming corridors, where even the janitor's closets pulsed with bioluminescent cleaning supplies, a human father named Marcus Chen swept away more than just debris. He was about to sweep away everything they thought they knew about miracles. Before we start, subscribe now so you don't miss more incredible stories like this one. Oh, and before we dive in, tell us in the comments where are you watching this video from. We love hearing from you and always read every message. The Vextheran Academy of Stellar Sciences floated like a jeweled crown above the planet's surface, its bioorganic walls breathing with the rhythm of a living organism. Through corridors wide enough for small spacecraft, students from a dozen different species navigated on everything from tentacled locomotion to anti-gravity bubbles. The air itself shimmered with microscopic nanobots that translated languages in real time, creating a constant symphony of clicks, whistles, and harmonious tones. Zephyr's hover chair hummed quietly as it carried her through the central courtyard, where other students practiced levitation techniques their species had mastered millennia ago. Her chair's sleek design, crafted from the finest metamaterial her father's mining empire could afford, only emphasized what she could not do. The Veltari beside her could phase through solid matter at will. The crystalline quarry could reshape their limbs like flowing water. Even the primitive humans, she caught herself using her peers' dismissive term, could at least move their legs. "Look, it's the crippled A's again," whispered Klaxer, a Valari whose family controlled 3 star systems. His translucent blue skin rippled with amusement as his followers gathered around him like moons orbiting a dead planet. Zafara's chair continued its programmed path, but her 4-fingered hands clenched the armrests. Her species, the Vexari, were known throughout the galaxy for their grace and fluid movements. Their ability to dance through 3-dimensional space as if swimming through liquid starlight. She had inherited none of it. Near the maintenance alcove, Marcus Chen pushed his cleaning cart with steady, methodical movements. His human form looked almost primitive compared to the exotic beauty surrounding him, short by galactic standards, with graying hair and clothes that had seen countless washes. But his eyes, those peculiar human eyes, followed Zephra's passage with something none of the others showed: recognition of shared struggle. Daddy's money can't buy everything, can it? Klaxel called out loud enough for the entire courtyard to hear. "I heard he's been shopping for miracle cures across 7 sectors. Maybe he should try the scrap markets on Debris Prime. Here they sell hope real cheap there." The laughter that followed felt like acid in the recycled air. But while the hall laughed, the outsider's eyes shimmered faintly, as if holding a truth older than the stars. 3 rotations later, during the Academy's traditional Harmony Festival, where students demonstrated their species' unique gifts, Klax decided to make his entertainment public. The great assembly hall stretched beneath a transparent dome that revealed the swirling nebula of the Andorian cluster, its natural light shifting from deep purple to brilliant gold as cosmic winds stirred distant gases. Students had gathered on floating platforms that arranged themselves in concentric circles, each one showcasing abilities that had evolved over millions of years. The ethereal dancers from Mistel moved like living poetry, their forms becoming transparent and solid in rhythm with celestial music. The thought singers of Prism created symphonies that painted colors directly into the listeners. Zafira sat in her designated section, the hover chair locked in place while others demonstrated why they belonged among the stars. Her father, Commander Thexaval, had arrived for the festival, wearing his ceremonial robes, the deep crimson, marking his status as one of the wealthiest beings in known space. Even his presence couldn't protect her from what came next. "I think we're missing someone from the demonstrations," Klaxer announced, his voice carried by the hall's amplification field. "Surely our beloved Zephyra has some talent to share, perhaps a sitting meditation. Or maybe she could show us the ancient art of remaining perfectly still." The gathered students erupted in laughter that echoed off the dome above. Recording devices floated through the air like mechanical insects, capturing every moment for the Academy's social networks that spanned dozens of worlds. From the cleaning station where he was replacing bioluminescent gel packs, Marcus paused in his work. His daughter Emma was attending a human colony school light years away, and he worked double shifts to afford her education. But something in Zephyr's posture, the way she held her head high despite the humiliation, reminded him of Emma's courage when other children had mocked her mixed heritage. "Why don't you show them something, Zephyr?" Klax continued, his translucent form now glowing with malicious pleasure. "Or are you going to sit there like an ornament for the rest of your life?" The silence that followed Zephyr's steady gaze spread through the assembly like ripples on a cosmic pond. She had never spoken during these gatherings, never drawn attention to herself beyond what her condition already brought, but something in her eyes suggested this time would be different. No one believed she would even try. But the silence that followed spread across the chamber like a storm. "I can show them something," Zephyra said quietly, her voice enhanced by the hall's acoustic field until every being present could hear, but not what they expect. Her hover chair responded to neural commands, rising higher than the other platforms until she floated at the assembly's center. The nebula beyond the dome seemed to pulse in anticipation, their colors shifting toward the deeper blues that Vexari associated with profound change. "Oh, this should be entertaining," Klaxel muttered. But uncertainty flickered across his features like a glitch in a hologram. Zephyr's hands moved over her chair's control interface, not with the clumsy movements of someone dependent on technology, but with the fluid grace of a master pianist. The chair began to move through three-dimensional space in patterns that defied conventional hover physics. She was dancing, not with her body, but with machinery that had become an extension of her will. "Impossible," whispered Professor Quilara, the Academy's head of applied physics. "Those aren't standard maneuvers. She's overriding the safety protocols in real time, compensating for gravitational fluctuations I can barely calculate." From his position near the maintenance hatch, Marcus watched with growing amazement. In his 20 years of interstellar janitorial work, he'd learned to observe details others missed. The patterns Zappara was creating weren't random. They were mathematical, following sequences that reminded him of the quantum equations he'd studied before Emma's birth had changed his priorities. But as her performance continued, another voice cut through the wonder. "Parlor tricks," Klax declared, though his confident tone had developed subtle cracks. "Anyone with enough money can buy advanced programming. Show us something that actually requires talent." And that's when Marcus made a choice that would echo through the galaxy. Setting down his cleaning equipment, he walked directly into the assembly area, something no maintenance worker had ever done during a formal gathering. "You want to see talent?" Marcus called out, his human voice strangely raw compared to the melodious tones of other species. "Then stop looking at what she can't do and start seeing what she's already mastered." The assembly fell into shocked silence. Janitor had just interrupted the Academy's most prestigious event. Security drones began moving toward him, but something in his calm demeanor made them hesitate. And just when everyone thought they would break, something was revealed that no one expected. Marcus walked toward Zephyr's hovering chair with steps that seemed oddly purposeful for a simple maintenance worker. As he moved, he pulled a small device from his tool belt, something that looked like standard cleaning equipment, but gleamed with circuits that belonged in an advanced laboratory. "You see, I've been watching Zephyra for 3 years," he said, his words now carrying an authority that transformed his entire presence. And what she just demonstrated wasn't pre-programmed movement. It was real-time quantum calculation compensating for 17 different gravitational fields simultaneously while maintaining perfect mathematical harmony. He activated the device and holographic equations began filling the air around them, complex formulas that painted themselves in light showing the precise calculations required for Zephyr's aerial dance. "I know these equations," whispered Professor Quill Nara, her tentacled form recoiling in recognition. "They're theoretical frameworks that our brightest physicists have been trying to solve for decades." Commander Thexval, Zephyr's father, was staring at Marcus with an expression that cycled through confusion, recognition, and finally something approaching awe. His mining empire had been built on rare element extraction from unstable quantum fields, work that required computational abilities beyond most species. "Capabilities, he said slowly. "You're the one who's been submitting the anonymous research proposals to my company. The quantum field stabilization techniques that have tripled our extraction efficiency." Marcus nodded, his weathered human features now carrying the weight of hidden depths. "I've been working on solutions for 3 years. Not for your company, for her." He gestured towards Zephyr, whose chair had settled back to its original position. But she was no longer the isolated figure from moments before. She was listening, with an intensity that made the very air around them seem charged with possibility. "Neural pathway reconstruction isn't impossible," Marcus continued, the device in his hands now projecting 3-dimensional models of Vexari nervous systems. "It just requires an approach that combines quantum field manipulation with biomechanical engineering. I've been developing the framework in my spare time between cleaning schedules." Clax's translucent form was growing dimmer, a sign of distress among his species. "You're a janitor," he stammered. You don't have the credentials." "No, I don't," Marcus agreed. Have something better. I have a daughter who was born with a genetic condition that makes her brain process spatial relationships differently than other humans. I've spent 20 years learning everything I could about neural adaptation, not for academic glory, but because I love her." The assembly was now completely silent, except for the gentle hum of life support systems. Even the recording devices had stopped their mechanical buzzing, as if sensing they were witnessing something beyond routine documentation. It wasn't just knowledge, it was legacy. And suddenly silence fell across the crowd. "My daughter Emma," Marcus continued, his voice carrying across the vast hall like a stone dropped into still water, "was born on Earth Colony 7 with what doctors called impossible neural architecture. Her brain processes 3-dimensional movement in ways that shouldn't work, but do. She can navigate asteroid fields in her mind while other children are learning to walk. The medical establishment called her disabled. I called her differently gifted." He turned towards Zafira, and for the first time her hover chair moved, not because of programmed commands, but because she chose to bring herself closer to this strange human who spoke of miracles with the calm certainty of someone who had already witnessed them. "When I took this job at the academy, it wasn't for the wages or the work visa," Marcus said. "It was because I recognized something in you, for the same thing I see in Emma every day. Your neural pathways aren't broken. They're evolved. Your brain processes space and movement in ways that surpass what your body was designed to handle." From his tool belt, he produced another device, this one clearly not standard maintenance equipment. It resembled a neural interface headset, but one crafted with technology that combined human engineering with materials that could only come from the deepest reaches of space. Commander Thexval stepped forward, his ceremonial robes rustling like solar winds through crystal formations. "The anonymous benefactor who's been funding neural research across 12 systems," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The one who's been sending breakthrough proposals to universities and medical centers. That was you." "I needed resources I couldn't access under my own name," Marcus confirmed. "A human janitor's theories don't carry much weight in galactic scientific circles, but results do. The mobility restoration techniques being tested on Century Prime, the neural pathway reconstruction surgeries that have helped thousands across 3 sectors, those all started with observations I made while watching Emma adapt to her condition." Claxer's form was now flickering between visibility and translucency, a sign of extreme distress among his species. This is impossible. You're nobody. You're nothing. Marcus turned to face him with eyes that held depths no one had recognized before. I'm a father, he said simply, and sometimes that's everything. He looked back at Zephyr, whose expression had transformed from resignation to something approaching wonder. The device I've created isn't a cure, he explained. It's an amplifier. Your neural pathways aren't damaged. They're operating at frequencies your species hasn't evolved to recognize yet. This will let your brain communicate with your body in ways that bypass traditional nervous system limitations. It's never been tested on a Vexitari, Professor Quilara said, her scientific training warring with the evidence floating before them in holographic form. No, Marcus agreed, but it has been tested on something just as complex, a human girl who rewrote the rules of spatial cognition and now pilots spacecraft through quantum storms that kill trained navigators. He held out the device toward Zephyr. The choice is yours. I can't promise it will work. I can only promise that it was built with love, tested with dedication, and refined through the kind of desperation that only a parent can understand. But the final blow came not from words. It came from a name the galaxy had long forgotten. Zephyr's four-fingered hand reached toward the neural interface with movements that seemed to echo through dimensions. As her fingers touched the device, bioluminescent patterns began flowing across its surface. Not the standard activation sequences found in commercial technology, but something that resembled living circuitry. The bioneural integration is already beginning, Professor Quilara breathed, her scientific instruments registering energy signatures that defied several known laws of physics. How is this possible? Marcus smiled with the quiet satisfaction of someone whose calculations had finally found their proof. Because I didn't design it based on how Vexitari nervous systems should work. I designed it based on how Zephyra's nervous system actually works. As the device settled against Zephyra's skull, waves of quantum energy began radiating outward in patterns that made the Academy's most sensitive equipment register readings beyond their maximum parameters. The nebula visible through the dome seemed to pulse in response, their cosmic gases shifting colors in rhythm with the frequencies emanating from the device. For 17 years, Zephyr had existed in a world where her thoughts ended at her waist. Now, for the first time, she felt sensations spreading downward like warm starlight flowing through previously empty channels. Her legs, muscles that had never responded to conscious will, began to twitch with intentional movement. The hover chair's safety protocols attempted to maintain her position, but she overrode them with neural commands that bypassed every limitation the technology had been designed to impose. Slowly, carefully she shifted her weight forward. Don't, Clack said, but his voice lacked its earlier malice. Now, it carried something approaching fear. You'll fall, you'll hurt yourself. Zephyr's feet touched the assembly hall's crystalline floor for the first time in her life. The sensation was overwhelming. Not just the physical contact, but the realization that she was connected to the ground, to the planet, to the galaxy in a way she had never experienced. She stood. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the Academy's life support system seemed to pause as if the building itself was holding its breath. Zafara swayed for a moment, muscle memory that had never existed, struggling to find balance. But the neural interface adapted in real time, compensating and adjusting with processing speed that surpassed the Academy's main computers. Then she took a step, then another. My daughter walks among the stars now, Marcus said quietly, but his words carried clearly through the hall's acoustic enhancement. And today, so do you, Commander Thexfall's eyes, organs that had seen the birth of new solar systems and the collapse of ancient civilizations, filled with a moisture that Vexitari physiology rarely produced. His wealth, accumulated across centuries of mining operations in the galaxy's most dangerous regions, had never bought him a moment of the joy he felt watching his daughter's first independent steps. Claxer's translucent form was now barely visible, his species equivalent of complete humiliation. The being who had mocked Zephyr's Limitations was forced to witness her transcendence of everything he had claimed. Defined her. This changes everything, Professor Quilnara whispered, her instruments still registering impossible readings. If this technology can be adapted for other conditions, other species it already has been, Marcus replied. There are now 317 beings across the galaxy who are walking, flying, or moving in ways their bodies were never supposed to allow. Each device is custom designed, each solution unique, but they all started the same way with a parent who refused to accept limitations. And as they walked away, no one dared laugh again, for they finally understood what they had witnessed. Months after the Harmony Festival, the Vexthar Academy had become the galaxy's premier Center for Adaptive Neural Technology. Students came from systems where possible conditions had previously meant isolation and despair, only to discover that their perceived limitations were often doorways to capabilities their species had never imagined. Marcus. Chen was no longer listed as a janitor on the Academy's employment records. His new title, Director of Applied Neural Solutions, carried with it resources that allowed him to work openly on technologies that had previously existed only in anonymous research papers, but he still kept his cleaning cart and could often be found in the maintenance, areas where his best insights had originally been. Born Emma Chen arrived at the Academy on the first transport from Earth Colony 7, her neural differences now recognized as qualifications rather than disabilities, as she and Zephyra worked together on projects that combined human spatial processing with Vextari mathematical intuition, creating solutions that neither species could have developed alone. The Thai hover chair that had once confined Zephyr now served as a mobile laboratory, its advanced systems repurposed to help design adaptive technologies for beings whose conditions couldn't be addressed through neural interfaces. She had chosen to keep it not as a reminder of limitations, but as a symbol of the ingenuity that could transform any constraint into a tool for progress. Claxer, stripped of the social status that had fed his cruelty, found himself enrolled in mandatory sensitivity training that had evolved into genuine educational opportunity. His first research paper submitted under the Academy's rehabilitation program explored the psychology of species-based prejudice, and won recognition from the Galactic Ethics Council. Commander Thexval redirected his mining empire's resources toward funding adaptive technology research across the galaxy. The Thexval Foundation became the primary source of support for families dealing with conditions that conventional medicine couldn't address, ensuring that no parent would face the journey Marcus had traveled alone. But perhaps the most significant change occurred in the galaxy's understanding of diversity itself. Species that had spent millennia defining themselves by their natural capabilities began to recognize that evolution had many forms and that sometimes the greatest gifts came disguised as challenges. The neural interface technology developed in a janitor's closet became the foundation for communication methods that allowed previously incompatible species to share consciousness directly. Trade agreements were negotiated through empathic links that transcended language barriers. Artistic collaborations emerged between beings whose sensory experiences had never overlapped before. In the deepest archives of the Galactic Library, new records were being written, not of conquest or expansion, but of the moment when the galaxy learned that strength could be found in any form, and that miracles were often performed by those whom others considered ordinary. On quiet evenings, when the Academy's corridors dimmed to simulate natural day cycles, Zephyra would walk through the halls where she had once been confined to hoverchair movement. Her steps echoed with purpose. Now, each footfall a reminder that limitations existed only until someone with enough love and determination decided to dissolve them. She would often stop at the maintenance areas where Marcus still worked on his newest projects. Together, they would review messages from across the galaxy, reports of adapted beings achieving things their species had never thought possible, requests for help from families facing their own impossible conditions, and gratitude from those who had learned to walk among the stars in their own unique ways. In a universe built on assumptions about what was normal, what was possible, and what defined worth, A single act of parental dedication had become a catalyst for transformation that would ripple through space and time for generations. Yet, unborn, the greatest journeys they had learned often begin with a single step, and sometimes that step is taken by someone everyone else believed would never walk at all.